Hey guys, welcome to another Necro guide. So this Necro guide is going to be focused towards speed runs. Now, if you compare this team to what I used previously in the progression video, you will notice that the main differences is that I'm using Ralk instead of Adrian and Galleon instead of Bella. Now, basically, the next step up from like the previous team is to replace Bella with Galleon, and the reason for that is so that Galleon will speed up the clearing of the trash waves, and therefore the run itself will be a lot faster. Like once you get to the boss, the time it takes to kill the boss is roughly the same, but yeah, everything else before that doesn't take as long because Galleon's buff, defense breaking everyone, and makes it a lot easier to kill all the waves. Now I'm going to do a couple of runs to show you. Now, in order for Colleen to solo heal this dungeon, ideally she would need to be about 180 speed or higher. You'll probably be aiming to make her quite fast anyway for raids, but basically as long as she's fairly fast, she'll be able to out heal all the trash waves, and that's generally it's generally the trash waves that will kill you in this run, especially the mini boss. So, but like if you don't have Pang, I know most people probably won't have Pang, but if you can use any other Rakshasa, I think ideally Hua is best in this slot. It's just that my Pang is just actually built for Necro already, so that's why I'm using her. But Hua works too, especially for the mini boss. If you have Hua and Galleon both reducing the attack bar of the mini boss, it makes it a lot safer, right? It makes it less likely for him to kill your team. Now, you can use Adrian instead of Ralk as well, but it's just that my Adrian is not built properly yet. He was on spare runes, and the only reason why it worked in my progression video is because, he didn't really need to be high DPS in that team because it was not really aiming towards a speed run. So I'm using Ralk instead. Ralk is a farmable unit, so it's not hard to get it. And usually for when I recommend people to build a farmer, usually I recommend to build Ralk anyway. So if you follow that advice, you will have a Ralk ready for this speedrun anyway. But if you don't, you can always use your Adrian as well. Just make sure your Adrian is max crit rate. That way he's always got good multi-hits, right? Obviously he doesn't do as much damage as Ralk does, and Ralk clears trash waves a lot quicker because of his passive, especially combined with Galleon. But he's still fairly good for this run. And actually, in fact, when I initially took Bella off my team and put Galleon, I was using this exact team except Adrian was there instead of Ralk. Now, as far as speed sinking is concerned, you don't need to worry about Galleon being too fast. Like, he's probably going to be fast for your PvP purposes anyway, and if you use him in dragons, he's going to want to be he wants to be fast for that too. But that's fine for Necro. It doesn't matter that he's like moving first, as long as your slow debuffer is landing the slow. There'll be enough time in subsequent rounds for him to land defense break, right? So he won't land it straight away because he's moving first, but later on he will land it. And for that reason also, Ralk also helps out in that he also has a defense break. So if in situations where Galleon is not landing it, then at least Ralk is there as a backup. Even though Ralk's one is not 100% reliable. I think the application rate is 75% or something, or 75% when he's skill up. Now I'm going to show another team. Now that team just then is not my usual speed run, right? So this is my current speed run, and I'll discuss or I'll show a couple runs and I'll show the runes at the end of the video, and just to discuss like why I'm using this sort of composition. So as I said, Ralk does provide defense break, so that saves you having to bring a dedicated one, like such as Galleon or Bella. And having two means there's a lot more chances to land the defense break, because as I said just then, his first skill is not 100% reliable when max skilled. So having two sort of makes it, you know, gives you enough chances to land it and make it a lot more, the run more consistent. Now, Huahi is the healer that replaces Colleen, because as you just saw with the third skill, Pride Will 4, it does a lot of damage, right? Obviously, you need the target to be defense broken for it to do a lot of damage, but as long as something is armor broken, she'll probably kill it, and that will also reset her cooldown on it, so she can do it again if she violent procs or on her next turn. So basically, she's sort of an upgrade to Colleen in that she heals with her Amuse, but she can also do damage, so she's sort of like a hybrid. The downside towards Huahi is that her first skill does not have a multi-hit, unlike Colleen, so you have to make sure that the rest of your team has enough multi-hits without her. But if she does use her Pride Will 4 on turn 1 on the boss, then it will break the shield straight away, because the third skill does a lot of multi-hits. So that's the worst case scenario, that she'll break the shield for you if she uses that ability. And if the shield's down, then she does a lot of damage to the boss, especially if he's armor broken. Now with this team, I have not tried it with just ignoring the Stolen Soul, but I think to be on the safe side, you probably still want to kill the Stolen Soul, because there's a lot of RNG involved in this fight. There will be a lot of times where you might kill the boss before he steals anyone, or get him really low by the time he does steal someone. But I think it's still best just to kill the soul. Okay, now one thing to make sure with this run is that your Rakshasa has max first skill, because the first skill is what you can be relying on for your defense. Your speed, attack speed slows, and that's what's going to help your team in subsequent turns to kill the boss quickly, and also to land the defense breaks, and even branding from the Shiwa. Now actually, another thing regarding Ralk, so as you know, for his first skill, he has additional chances to proc more attacks. You may have seen him in PvP videos where he just goes nuts and scratches, 5-6 times, right? Similar to how Tyron will spam Spirit Balls in PvP, right? There's the same case for this, so that's why he's still providing multi-hits, even though it's not reliable, but he can do it. And worst case scenario, he'll use Team Up, which will bring another unit to hit the boss. So worst case scenario, he'll bring either Huahi or Pang to do one additional hit. So at least it's 2 hits on his Team Up. And then best case scenario, he brings Shiwa to triple hit, or the second Ralk for him to proc additional scratches. So there's a lot of synergy involved with having Ralk in this team. Now you may have noticed one of my Ralks did die. Now, so this run may actually fail because of that reason, like there's less damage on the boss now, but I have found that it does sometimes work without with the missing unit still. Now there is one downside. As you saw just then, Ralk did go quite crazy on my Shiwa. Luckily, he didn't defense break her, otherwise he probably would have killed her. So that's one danger to keep in mind for this team. So I'm actually very close to failing. Actually, my team doesn't fail that often. But because my one of my units died during the trash wave, it makes that would make it unreliable. But we'll see how it goes. The boss did refresh his passive, so I have to kill it twice or like another time. But hopefully they can still do it. Now, one advantage that Hua-He has in this run over Colleen is that her Amuse will heal a lot more than Colleen's third skill. Because Colleen's third skill heals for a fixed amount, whereas Hua-He's one scales of attack power, and since it's similar to say Chasud healing a unit that has very low HP. Amuse will typically heal, units with low HP back to almost full health. So that for that reason, I think she's a superior healer because she still provides free turn attack buff, and it's a free turn cooldown if it's maxed, and then she's also providing damage in addition to that. But Colleen is safer in that she provides extra multi-hits on her first skill, so that's the disadvantage of having a Hua-He. Now I'm gonna go through the runes and just like quickly go through like the skills and stuff for the units. Now this is Shiwa's runes. She's on Violent Revenge, attack, crit rate, attack, and the reason to do that is so that the main reason I use crit rate on slot 4 for her is so that she gets 100% crit rate. An alternative way to build this team is to use your Rakshasa as the leader. Alright, so you have to give up the attack power leader, but it makes it easier for you to run slot 4 crit damage, right? Because I want my units to always crit, otherwise there's going to be more inconsistencies, right? So one failed or one missed crit, and that might be the difference between getting the boss down and him stealing the soul before he dies, right? So since there's a lot of RNG involved with Violent and Revenge Box, I want to at least reduce the damage RNG component. Okay, now one thing to keep in mind now with Shiwa is her second skill is no longer used on the boss, and that's very important because this ability doesn't actually deal damage, so it doesn't break the shield, right? So now on the boss, she'll only use her first and third ability, and that's really good because both of these abilities have multi-hits. And for that reason, she's now worth skilling up. Previously, people avoided it because they didn't want to level up the enchant skill, because the skill up is -1 cooldown reduction. So people didn't want her to use the second skill more often, right? Because it's basically wasting her turns on the boss. But now it's fine to skill her up. And if you happen to have spare 9 tails, I think it's a good idea to skill her up if you can afford to. If you're not building any other 9 tail, and that's just so that she can do more damage. More damage means faster runs, so it's something to consider for those spare 9 tails that you open. Now this is the first Relk. He's also on a Violent Revenge, and I built all my units the same way in that they're all max crit, right? So that he also has slot 4 crit rate. So I'll hold the runes up for a couple of seconds, and you can pause if you want to have a closer look. And as I said, he's also on attack, crit rate, attack. Okay, so I explained his abilities already. It is worth, like, some people would say if you are lucky enough to max scratch before team up, then you should leave team up unskilled, because on auto he's going to use his first skill more often. But I think it's fine to max him out for Necro. The team up is still pretty nice, right? Because if he teams up with Hua He, at least it's reducing the cooldowns for her as well. And even reducing cooldown on Shiwa is not bad because her third ability is what's going to put branding on the boss, and it does 5 hits. So it's good to reduce cooldowns on your units. Okay, so this is the second route. He's slight. Wait, I believe. Just 1 second. Actually, yeah, sorry. I was a bit confused. I have 2 routes, so this is the better route. His stats are a bit better because just the way I optimized it. Gave him the best runes first, and just a point to put across. Some you might find runes like this where you have a lot of crit damage on it. These sort of runes are really good for builds where you're going to use slot for crit rate. So don't discount, runes that have no crit rate. As long as there's high crit damage on that rune, it's worth keeping because you can actually get very similar stats to having attack crit damage attack. See, like this rock does not have any slot 4 crit damage, but his crit damage is almost at where it would be if he had a slot 4 crit damage and no crit damage substats. Because crit damage slot 4 is 80%, and you have a base crit damage of 50%. So at minimum, you would typically expect 130% on a non-rage user. So this is already getting pretty close to that, and in addition, he's got max crit rate. So that still works out pretty nicely, right? Okay, so let's move on to the other runes. Some of these are ungrinded. I will work on that, but he works without it anyway. So this one is Hua He. Now Hua He she does need like a bit more HP than your typical units, especially if you want to try to use her in raid. I have tried her in raid before, and it's okay. It works okay, but she needs to be decently tanky for that. So these are her runes. Now she's very stat heavy, right? She benefits from a lot of different stats. She wants crit rate, crit damage, HP, attack, speed as well. It wouldn't hurt to have a bit of accuracy or resistance as well. Maybe not so much for Necro, but definitely for raids. And even defense is pretty nice too. Alright, so she needs to be like semi-tanky. And as I explained before, I think her Amuse needs to be max skill to be 3 turn cooldown. So I have tried using her, or I used to use her when it was on a 4 turn cooldown when it wasn't maxed, and it made a huge difference once I managed to get that last skill up for her on Amuse. So if you don't have her max skilled on Amuse, I probably wouldn't recommend building her yet, or at least not using her yet. But if you can get her max skill, then she will definitely speed up the run for you. And obviously, even her first skill hits pretty decently with like an attacker build. So similar to the other units, she's also on max crit rate, and she has a decent amount of speed so that she can heal through the trash waves. I used to run attack percent on her slot 2. Obviously that makes her heal and do more damage, but it made it unreliable because she's a lot slower and doesn't heal as much. So I think slot 2 speed is probably a good idea unless you have a lot of good speed substats. And this is my Pang. Now obviously you don't need to have Pang specifically, you can use any Rakshasa. I haven't tried with using any the other slow debuffers, but they probably will work, and the ones I'm talking about are say Fuko, Rigel, which are the wind and water lich. Maybe the jack-o'-lanterns might work too, but just keep in mind the jack-o'-lanterns have a bad skill animation, so that might slow down your run. So you would try to avoid using them if you can, but if you have no other option, then you can certainly try that as well. Okay, so this is Pang's stats. If you don't have Peng, I think it's good to use Hua if you can, but Yen can also work too. Just whichever Rakshasa you use, make sure your first ability is maxed for the additional harmful effects or harmful effect rate. And so a bit unlike the other units, she's on HP, crit rate HP, and this is so that she can tank the mini boss, right? If you're using a non-light unit, like, well, if you're not using Pang basically, then you don't have to use HP. You can build them towards an attacker instead, or even a hybrid. So like attack, crit rate, HP, or something like that. That will still work. Just that you might have trouble with the mini boss. So it really just depends on whether your Hua and your Galleon, if you're running that, can keep them at bay, or if your units can just kill the boss fast enough and that you can avoid him hitting you back. It may require a bit of luck though. If you can't, if the run is still unreliable for you, say if you're using Hua instead and you have no light unit to tank, you can take out one of the Ralks and put a Bella in instead, and that will make it safer because the Bella will tank the mini boss, and additionally you have more heals too anyway, so it makes it a lot safer. And if you do that build, then your Rakshasa probably will definitely be like a YOLO build for more damage. Now, as far as speed seeking is concerned, your Huahi will probably be moving first, which is fine, because you want her to be fast anyway, so that she can heal your team often enough. And then after that, your Shiwa should move next, and then your two Ralks should move, and then Pang or your slow debuffer should move last. Okay. So I think that covers the speed runs. There are definitely other alternatives. That, as I said, some people use things like Lucian or Zyros in the leader slot. That will work too. And some people use Fuko instead of a Rakshasa, and maybe Galleon instead of the second Ralk also works. So there's a lot of different combinations you can work with. You just have to test and see how it works for you. And it just also depends on your rune quality. One other thing to keep in mind though, before I end the video, is you should keep in mind glory point buildings. They help a lot on dungeon runs, right? Because you think about it, no points in Ancient Sword as opposed to max Ancient Sword is 20% attack. That's quite a large number of, a lot of attack. So for me, all of the relevant debuffs, relevant glory point buildings for Necro are maxed, except for the light sanctuary, right? For my Pang. But for most people, I think as long as your fire sanctuary is maxed for the maximum amount of damage, and then you just want your your typical buildings like your Guardstone, Crystal Altar, Speed Totem, and the Fallen Ancient Guardian. Like these will probably be the buildings that you'll focus on the most. I think I may have forgotten Ancient Sword. So all these universal buildings, you probably want to focus on them first because they're more efficient, and then you work on your damage your elemental damage buildings, right? So if you don't have maxed buildings like I do, you might need slightly better rune quality and to match, my team. So I think that about covers it. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me in comments, and I'll answer them as soon as I can. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.